Welcome to Headstones and Microphones Founder Stories, where we use AI to step into the past through a researched, first-person simulation of history's most visionary founders. I am your host, Calvin. While we've added some creative storytelling, our goal is to inspire your own study of these trailblazers. Now, let's meet our guests. Today, we have a phenomenal, truly groundbreaking duo with us. They are the minds behind a product we all use every single day without a second thought. The men who took a highly sensitive, unspoken Victorian necessity and turned it into a global standard of hygiene. Please welcome the legendary founders of the Scott Paper Company, Edward Irvin Scott and Clarence Wood Scott. Gentlemen, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having us, Calvin.
Yes, thank you, Calvin.
It is truly an honor to have you both. Let's dive right into it. The vision ahead of its time. When you first conceived of your business, the world was a very different place. What was the exact moment you realized society was moving in a direction only you could see? And how did you convince the early skeptics?
In the late 1870s, the world was a much more rugged place when it came to everyday conveniences. We started out in Philadelphia in 1879, selling coarse paper goods like bags and wrapping paper. But we noticed a distinct shift happening. Cities were growing, indoor plumbing was starting to emerge in finer homes and hotels, and yet people were still using old newspapers, almanacs, or catalog pages for their personal hygiene. It was unsanitary and uncomfortable. We realized that as society modernized, personal health and cleanliness would have to modernize too.
Convincing the skeptics, however, was a mountain of a task. People laughed or grew deeply uncomfortable when we talked about custom paper products for the water closet. In the Victorian era, it was considered incredibly improper, even vulgar, to speak of such things openly. We had to bypass the skepticism by selling our early tissue products directly to private dealers, hotels, and merchants who would put their own custom brand names on them. We let the private labels prove the demand until the world caught up to our way of thinking.
That is incredible. Talk about navigating the social norms of the era. Let's look at the original leap of faith. Leaving behind safety to build something entirely unproven is a massive gamble. What did your life look like the day you decided to go all in? And what was the core belief that gave you the courage to take that first step?
Before the fall of 1879, we were just trying to make our way in Philadelphia, working around the paper and pushcart trades, scraping together what little we could. The day we decided to officially rent our own small space and buy our first lot of paper, we had very little security. If we failed, there was no safety net. We were putting our names and our livelihoods on the line.
What gave us the courage was the simple, unwavering belief in utility. We believe that if you provide a product that genuinely improves human comfort and daily health, it isn't a luxury. It becomes an absolute necessity. We knew that once people experienced the convenience and hygiene of specialized paper, they would never want to go back to the old, rough alternatives. That core belief pushed us through the fear of the unknown.
It's a beautiful thing when a belief turns into a daily essential for millions. Moving on to an unwavering conviction. In the absolute beginning, when you had no data, no capital, and no blueprint, what was the one truth you held onto that everyone else around you dismissed?
The one truth we held on to was that privacy and convenience would eventually conquer social embarrassment. In 1879, there were no market surveys or data analytics to tell us how many rolls of paper a household would buy. Merchants told us we were wasting our time because people were content using free scrap paper, but our truth was that human beings naturally desire dignity and comfort. We knew that if we could make our product accessible, the sheer human desire for a cleaner, better life would outweigh the cultural taboo of buying it.
Trusting human nature over passing societal trends. That's a founder's instinct right there. Let's talk about the rocky roads, specifically the first ruinous setback. Long before your company became a household name, you hit a wall where everything nearly collapsed. Take us back to that first major failure. What went wrong, and how did you find the willpower to restart?
Oh, the early days were filled with financial tightropes. Our biggest early wall wasn't a sudden fire or a single disaster, but rather the crushing weight of slow, stifling growth due to that cultural silence I mentioned. Because we couldn't openly advertise our product without offending the public, our inventory would sit and our capital would completely dry up. We came perilously close to running out of money to buy raw paper stock.
We found the willpower to restart by changing our entire operational philosophy. Instead of giving up because we couldn't market a single Scott brand, we leaned entirely into customization. We told ourselves, if the public won't buy it from the Scott brothers, we will manufacture it for thousands of different private dealers to sell under their own names. We swallowed our pride, kept our machines running, and that flexibility saved our business from collapsing into bankruptcy.
Pivot and adapt. That is the ultimate survival tool. This leads beautifully to the public misunderstanding. Innovation often looks like madness to contemporaries. Was there a specific product, philosophy, or strategy you were utterly convinced would work, but the public initially rejected or ridiculed? How did you respond?
Selling paper on a perforated roll was seen as a strange novelty by many at first. People were used to flat packages of individual sheets. When the concept of rolled perforated tissue started coming into the market, some critics thought it was an unnecessary gimmick that would just unravel or get tangled.
Our response was to double down on quality and consistency. We focused heavily on making our Waldorf brand rolls, which eventually became a massive success, so reliable and affordable that the sheer convenience of the roll format spoke for itself. We didn't argue with the critics, we just let the product win them over in the privacy of their own homes.
Let the product do the talking. I love that. Now, let's address the mental weight of leadership. Behind the legendary name was a human being facing immense pressure, whether from financial panics, internal betrayal, or personal doubt. How did you shoulder that burden without letting the vision splinter?
The pressure was constant, especially during the economic shifts of the late 19th century. When you employ workers and have creditors knocking on the door, the weight can feel crushing. For me, the secret to shouldering that burden was the fact that I wasn't alone. I had my brother. When my confidence would waver, Edward was there with his steady, business-minded resolve.
And when I was overwhelmed by the operational headaches, Clarence brought the practical energy to keep us moving. We also kept our focus entirely on the long game. We didn't allow personal doubts or short-term financial panics to make us compromise on the quality of our paper. We kept our heads down, trusted each other, and stayed completely dedicated to serving our customers.
Having a trusted partner makes all the difference in the world. Let's talk about your early supporters, the first true believers. Who were the very first people, beyond your immediate family, to buy into what you were doing? How did you convince early workers or customers to trust an entirely unproven concept?
Our first true believers were the small Philadelphia merchants, hotel managers, and drugstore owners. We had to convince them by making it a completely risk-free proposition. We would show them the quality of our coarse papers and tissue, offer to print their own store names on the packaging, and demonstrate how it could bring repeat customers back to their shops.
As for our early workers, we convinced them by treating them with immense respect and instilling a sense of pride in our craftsmanship. We weren't just chopping wood and rolling paper, we were creating standard-setting sanitary goods. When they saw the care we put into the machinery and the cleanliness of our operation, they took ownership of the vision alongside us.
That momentum is everything. Speaking of which, the tipping point, can you take us to the exact moment where you felt the momentum shift? What was the specific milestone, contract, or breakthrough where you realized, we aren't just going to survive, we are going to change everything?
For us, the massive tipping point began to materialize around 1890. That was the year our Waldorf brand roll was introduced and began taking hold. Suddenly, we weren't just filling small, sporadic private label orders anymore. The demand for the rolled tissue surged dramatically.
I remember looking at the production ledger and seeing the Waldorf brand begin to dominate our sales. It eventually grew to represent over 60% of our entire business. Watching our own branded rolls move out of our facilities by the trainload was the moment we looked at each other and realized we had permanently changed the hygiene habits of the entire world. We knew then that we had built an empire.
Over 60% of sales from one brilliant focus. That is a massive milestone. Let's talk about the foundation of that empire. Forging the culture. You didn't just build a company, you built a distinct culture and philosophy that outlasted you. In the early days, when it was just a handful of people in a room, how did you instill that standard of excellence or service?
From the very beginning, our culture was rooted in absolute cleanliness, consistency, and consumer trust. When we were just a small group in a room, Clarence and I were right there on the floor. We didn't just give orders. We set the pace. We checked the paper texture ourselves. We made sure every single worker understood that even though our product was meant to be disposed of, the quality of its manufacturing had to be flawless.
We also fostered a culture of open innovation. Years later, my nephew Arthur, Edward's son, brought that same standard of excellence into our marketing and product development, helping us introduce paper towels in 1907. That spirit of continuous improvement and uncompromising quality was baked into the company culture when it was just a few guys handling paper rolls in Philadelphia.
Leading by example always sets the highest standard. Now, let's clear the air a bit. The greatest myth of your legacy. History books often flatten a person's life into a neat, polished narrative. What is the biggest misconception people have about your journey, your character, or how your company was actually built?
I think the biggest misconception is that we effortlessly invented and dominated the toilet paper roll market overnight, or that we were the very first to ever think of it. The truth is, it was an incredibly slow, grueling process of chipping away at Victorian taboos for over a decade. We spent years hiding behind thousands of private labels because the public was too embarrassed to buy a product called Scott. Our success wasn't a sudden stroke of genius. It was years of quiet, patient, and often anonymous hard work.
It's the unglamorous years that build the lasting legacies. Let's look at the personal side. The defining sacrifice. Building an empire always requires a steep personal cost. Looking back at the entirety of your life, what was the hardest sacrifice you had to make for the sake of your vision? And was it ultimately worth it?
The hardest sacrifice was undoubtedly the peace of mind and the endless hours away from our families during those intense, uncertain early decades. When you are pouring every spare cent and every waking hour into a business that society is hesitant to even talk about, the stress follows you home. You miss quiet moments, and you carry a constant, exhausting mental load.
But looking back at the entire journey, knowing that our efforts laid the foundation for a company that kept its plants operating at full tilt, without laying off a single worker during the darkest days of the Great Depression, and knowing we elevated the health and daily comfort of millions, yes, it was absolutely worth it.
That is a profound legacy to leave behind. To wrap up our core questions, let's look back to the beginning. A message to day one. If you could send a single sentence back through time to yourself on the very first day you started this venture, knowing every trial, triumph, and heartbreak that awaited you, what would you say?
I would tell myself, do not let the silence and embarrassment of today discourage you, for your quiet persistence will one day become the world's indispensable standard.
That is beautiful. I would add, trust your brother, keep the machines clean, and know that the risk you are taking today will give dignity and health to generations to come.
Gentlemen, those are powerful words to live by. Before we sign off today, do you have any closing remarks about the interview or the stories you shared that you would like to share with our listeners?
I just want to say to anyone out there trying to build something new, don't let current societal skepticism deter you. If your product truly serves a fundamental human need, stay the course. And Calvin, thank you again for giving us the opportunity to step out of history and share our story. It has been a true joy.
Yes, stay true to your vision, keep your standards high, and remember that great things take time to build. Thank you so much for having us on the show, Calvin. It was an absolute pleasure.
The pleasure was all mine, Edward and Clarence. What an incredible conversation. Today we got a first-hand look at how the Scott brothers took a massive cultural taboo, leaned into flexibility and private labelling, and ultimately built the global standard for modern hygiene through sheer persistence and an unwavering belief in human utility. It's a powerful reminder that sometimes the most revolutionary ideas are the ones that serve our most basic, everyday needs. And that wraps up another conversation from Beyond the Grave. Thanks for joining us on the Headstones and Microphones podcast, Founder Stories. Remember, legends may die, but their stories never do. Please help spread the word by sharing and following the pod.